I sometimes get folks saying, "Zo, don't call the left-wingers liberals." Sorry to be a knucklehead, but no, I'm totally gonna keep calling them liberals. Democrats have tried to sucker people by assuming the cloak of liberalism and progressivism. I say make them choke on that cloak instead of helping them ditch their self-assigned labels to hoodwink people and catch them in drag.
I think what's happening. Propaganda.
As I keep reminding y'all, a liberal is a person who takes liberties, and these liberties lead to oppression. Liberalism in government will take the liberty to be liberal with taxing your money, spending your money, borrowing more money, liberal with writing more bad laws, liberal with imposing more regulations, liberal with imposing more fees, and in general will take liberties with their power and take liberties with your rights. What's this great positive about being liberal? They fashion themselves a rope to hang themselves with, and you want to let them off of it? Taking liberties with the Constitution results in slavery and oppressive government. But people are fooled into thinking that the government's going to protect you to do whatever you want, and or is going to take care of you with food, housing, healthcare, etc. Not realizing that the government can't satisfy what you think you're entitled to without forcing the expense onto someone else. And that's when the proletariats and the wards of the state become the slave drivers and take the liberty to say, yeah, but someone else can afford it. But here's what I reckon people are missing. It has to be understood that we enjoy a constitutional republic with a Judeo-Christian foundation, even if you don't believe in the Bible. Hey, I don't believe in the Quran, but I still acknowledge that the law of the land in the Islamic territories is based on it. And because our Constitution is Judeo-Christian based, mankind is protected by the authority of the 10 Commandments. And those 10 Commandments were put in place against the biggest violators of human rights that history has ever known. Government. Governments have always been the biggest thieves and murderers. And I'm not talking about war, because in war, killing may be necessary in self-defense if you're just in your defense. Like say, for instance, you kidnap a kid and you got into a shootout with police and you shot back defending yourself. You're not just in your defense. You're a kidnapper and you're attempting murder against a person trying to rescue your hostage. Anyway, when I'm talking about governments being murderers, I'm talking about genocide. Governments are the biggest thieves and tyrants. Why? Because they take liberties with their power. That being said, we understand that the Constitution is written in the face of our government as much as it is the people. And with the 10 Commandments at its foundation, it says to our government, you shall not murder your people. You cannot deprive them of life without due process. You shall not steal from your people. You cannot deprive them of their property without due process. You shall not have any other gods before God, which means government is not the grantor of your rights. Therefore, by their own authority, cannot take your rights without due process. They cannot take your life, your liberty, or your property by their own authority. And they cannot use the name of God in vain to justify themselves to do so. God already said it in his commandments, and our Constitution was fashioned to reflect that. That is why our First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, because God knows that government will misuse, twist, and try to use the authority of his name to abuse the people. This makes our republic and Constitution very unique, and it only works if you interpret the Constitution and the Bible it's based on conservatively. If you try to be liberal with them, that interpretation leads to oppression. However, in other republics or democracies or dictatorships, etc., the rights of man aren't recognized the same way and have been very oppressive. And this is where people misappropriate the terms liberal and conservative. Liberal and conservative don't have the same connotation in our republic. Being conservative pretty much means you operate within the prescribed perimeters. You do not deviate, which means if you're conservative with Sharia, for example, or conservative with Nazism, you're going to stick to what it says and it leads to murder. So the Muslims who are rejecting groups like ISIS are being liberal with their doctrine. Their doctrine is murderous. So they have to take liberties with it to try to convince themselves that it's a religion of peace. Saying things like, well, that's not what that really means, or you're just interpreting it incorrectly. But with our Bible and Constitution, it's the exact opposite. If you try to be liberal with them and deviate from what they say instead of being conservative with them, it leads to oppression. The Bible and Constitution are not liberal. They're liberating, and are only liberating if they're interpreted conservatively without liberal deviations. That's why you'll hear people say things like, I'm a liberal in the classical sense, or I'm a classical liberal. That doesn't apply here. You're thinking about the kind of liberalism that people had to resort to find freedom from tyrants who didn't acknowledge their rights. In this republic, it takes being conservative so that we can keep and enjoy our rights. And just because the government shouldn't make abortion legal doesn't mean the government would be intruding upon your rights. That would be the government doing what they're supposed to do and keep you from intruding upon that kid, ergo intruding upon that kid's right to live. The first right, the first God-given right. The government is supposed to protect that. Hello? Anyway, y'all are falling into the Alinsky trap. Liberalism in America ain't the same kind of liberalism of socialist and communist Europe, but people are suckered by what liberalism meant there and think it applies here. But if you try to be liberal with the supreme law of the land here, it will lead you right back to where Saul Alinsky wanted you in the first place, in the clutches of communism. Sucker. Lastly, another thing I want to clear up. And I'm trying to be nice, but I'm long jaded with pastors soliciting applause by throwing out the applause line, Jesus is neither a Republican or a Democrat. It cheats the congregation because it keeps them from recognizing which platform is opposed to the Bible and which one is more conducive with it. Because they're looking at the iniquities of people. And when it comes to people, yes, both Democrats and Republicans will disappoint you. But the platforms are what you want to look at and hold your representatives accountable to it. The platform of the Democrat Party stands far apart from the Ten Commandments, and the Republican platform stands closer. Therefore, it stands closer to the foundation of our Constitution. Therefore, it is the better party to vote with for the conservation of our republic. Thus, conservative Republicans. Democrats believe in majority rule. Republicans are for the rule of law. When Jesus rules, he won't be elected by a majority vote, and he won't bring his laws with the approval of a majority vote. He won't be basing his laws by what the majority thinks should be right based on their self-righteousness. Democrats vote on the most popular things to vote on: selfishness and self-righteousness. And Jesus won't be playing the democracy nonsense that only leads people into oppression as they vote for the state to do for the people, and the state just ends up taking from the people. In a democracy, the state takes more from the people than it gives. Only Jesus can give back more to the masses than he takes. Jesus gave of himself and told others to give of themselves by their own volition. He didn't give the government license to break his commandment to not steal and gave them a pass to take stolen property to give welfare. The Democrat Party doesn't reflect the way of Jesus at all. In our republic, we're ruled by the law. Our republic is different from others in what our laws are and what they're based on. And we also have representatives who are supposed to maintain them. Now, speaking to Christians, Jesus is our representative, and we used our sovereign power of choice and elected to be ruled by his law. And not only does he write the law that we've consented to be ruled by, he is the law that we're ruled by. So I don't think Jesus would at all be offended if you said his teachings are reflected in the Republican Foundation. Oh, and not to mention, he's pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, hates theft, loves charity. Welfare is not charity, it's institutionalized theft. He loves work, he risks his life to work. The Pharisees wanted to murder him for working on the Sabbath. The Bible says if you don't work, you don't eat. If you want society to help you, don't steal from them. The more power you give to government to steal from people because you want to benefit from it, the less resources people will have to conserve a thriving economy. You know I'm right, because you're still expecting the government to give you more, which means you're never satisfied. I'm Alfonso Rachel with ZoNation. Don't let liberals switch around labels. Make them own their deception. Christians, stop exalting yourself above politics. I hate politics too, but I love God and his gift of freedom, and he will not be pleased if we let his blessings be voted away. Sorry to be a knucklehead, but no.